All right. Good morning, class.
Morning, doctor.
Morning, doctor.
Good to see you again. Today, our discussion is argument and argument analysis. And so the title of my presentation is Understanding and Evaluating an Argument. So we're going to look at the term argument, which we first came across in chapter, I think, 6. The one about reasoning and the types of reasoning, inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning, developing and assumptions and arguments. So we're going to look at the term argument again, since argumentation is crucial in the act of reading and writing. And so, by the way, again, as usual, this discussion is relevant and significant to the writing activity as well as the reading activity. The writing act and the reading act. So if you are a writer or if you want to write, then this class is significant to your writing, whether it's a profession or even just an essay that you want to write and post on the internet or here and there. And as a reader, it's really crucial that we try to sort out the wheat from the chaff, the good from the bad, when we read, when we hear. As much as there is information in the world, there is disinformation. Maybe dishonesty is even more than honesty. This is also an aspect that we highlighted in the previous class last week when we talked about, the purposes of writing, one of which was the writing to persuade, persuasive writing. We made a crucial point that it is rare in everyday life that language is used purely for communication, the transmission of information and ideas from one person to another. Rarely is language used like that. Usually there is an agenda, there is an ulterior motive that writers wish to communicate, that writers wish to to achieve. It's beyond communication. It goes beyond communication. When the purpose is really to influence people's perception and cause a change in their loyalties, in their beliefs, in their attitudes towards something, towards an issue, towards a people, a society, a political leader, a political party, a product. Today's class has to do with the third level of thinking about a reading. Recall the 3 types or levels of thinking about a reading. The basic one is the literal level, literal comprehension, where you just look at the meanings on the surface without difficulty. Then you move into a second layer of meaning, where you try to uncover the unspoken, what remains unspoken. So this is the inferential level of thinking about text, inferential comprehension. Where you draw conclusions, where you make inferences supported by information in the text. So you fill in missing gaps at the inferential level. Interesting. Now we're going to go a step further and really beyond the text. We're not going to be confined or restricted to the text. In today's reading, active reading, level of thinking about reading, we go really beyond the text in an attempt to deconstruct the text, in an attempt to critique the text and understand and evaluate it to see if it's really what it claims to be, or an attempt to manipulate our, perception and make us, buy into something, believe in something that is not, what, as I said, it claims to be. So that's the critical level or the evaluative level in the three, thinking guide. So, how to know what's really real in a world increasingly full of fake? How to know what's really real in a world full of fake? Especially nowadays, where there is an explosion of information. Explosion of information. Information is just at the tips of your hands. It wasn't so easy in the past. Getting a piece of information would require you to, do a long search, go to a library, try to see, experts. But now information is everywhere and just at the tips of your hands. But this explosion also, unfortunately, has brought along with it a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformation. Not everyone in the world is honest and pursuing honest, agenda. There are many criminals, whether they are wearing suits, white collar, and so we want something that can help us, a framework that can help us know what's really real in a world increasingly full of fake. Sort out information from disinformation, sort out the wheat from the chaff. Here comes to our help critical reading and critical thinking. So what is a critical thinking? And what is a critical reading? And how can we develop the ability to critique a text? Of course, I am not promising you that this class will make you critical readers or critical thinkers or critical discourse analysts. This is a big claim. But it is hoped that this class will give you some insights as how to, it will make you at least aware of the fact that much of what is written or some of what is written is meant to deceive you. And so, in order for us to try not to be deceived, the first step is to be aware of this. So awareness is the first step to liberation. If you want to liberate a people, a person, to make him disenchanted, not to be disillusioned, to free someone from disillusion, someone from illusion, falsehood, the first step is awareness. Being conscious, being aware of language and the power of language to exercise domination, to enact and sustain control, to subjugate the minds, to influence perception. I've already made some references to this in my classes. References to language as being a powerful tool, and that reality is shaped by language and linguistic means. And that reality is not something out there. Reality is what you see in your skull. And so you may be programmed to see reality from a certain perspective, that of the discourse producer, that of the discourse producer, the media institutions that are controlled by a certain regime and that propagate a certain worldview. Critical thinking is rational thinking. So, not emotional, rational. It is the ability to evaluate an idea logically and rationally in order to make good judgment using logical reasons and evidence. So, the ability to evaluate ideas, arguments logically, to make judgments, informed judgments, to problem solve, to make decisions, to buy, not to buy, to go, not to go, to support, not to support, to vote, not to vote. What is critical reading? Critical reading is the process. Notice that it is a process. You've got to break down the elements of an argument, moving from A to Z, moving from the literal level of comprehension into the inferential level of comprehension, and finally the most complex level of comprehension, level of extracting meaning beyond the text, critical or evaluative comprehension. It's a process where you need to first identify the issue, then the point the author is making, then summarizing whether mentally or on a piece of paper the points, the supporting sentences or points the author is making to support his position or her position, into, after understanding, into analyzing, breaking down the argument, looking at these points that you have summarized, and then critically evaluating them, critically reading them in light of objectivity, in light of validity, in light of credibility, in light of completeness, in light of relevance and adequacy. Assessing the evidence in terms of relevance, adequacy, quantity, quality, completeness, credibility, validity, objectivity. And so it's a process. It becomes, once you get used to it, it becomes automatic. It becomes habitual. But to reach this stage, you need to be first conscious of what we are talking about now, and to start practicing, start going into these 3 levels of reading consciously. First a few minutes, surface level, like children do, then trying to see any hidden messages at the level of inferential comprehension, and then the hardest task, and that is evaluating, assessing the evidence and evaluating the value of argument, whether this argument is written or spoken by Dr. Aladdin, by this, by that. We need to, we need to take things carefully. We need to take things with a pinch of salt. Never come under the spell, never be deceived that because something is in print, it is sacred. It is a fact. You've got to take things in a pinch. We've already stated that we live in a world where there is a lot of deception, a lot of chicanery, a lot of shenanigans, a lot of skullduggery, a lot of dishonesty, criminality. And so we have to develop a critical ability, critical eyes. So this class will, scratch the surface, provide you with some tools. If you decide to take these tools and capitalize on them, try to apply them, go beyond this class, not just by the end of this class, you forget about them. If you take this class a step forward, then you will be on your right path, on the right path to developing, critical eyes. But if you just forget about it, just a class, as any class. So critical reading is the process of reading that goes beyond just understanding or accepting a text, literal and inferential comprehension. Understanding and accepting the text. Now we want to evaluate. We want to see whether we should believe in the text and act accordingly, or guys, there is really, when I think about my own life, my own experiences, the messages we receive every day, a bombardment of messages, WhatsApp messages, email, a lot of information. It's really, everyone receives tons of messages weekly, monthly, hundreds of messages, maybe daily, from different sources. Sources we know and sources we don't know. And information that is not, referenced. It is not an easy job, really. Hearing from this, hearing from that, hearing from this, hearing from that. It's a burden on us to try to process and analyze, this barrage of information and see if we don't want to be. I'm not saying that everything we read is dishonest, meant to deceive you, certainly not. But since there is also a lot of disinformation and people who have certain agenda, hidden agenda, then we need this kind of ability. We need to be aware and to try. Problematize the given. Problematize what you hear. Ask questions, raise questions. Liberation, not enslavement. Remember that we are being enslaved by language. I have said that language is used as a means to enslave people. And language can also be used as a means to change and liberation and emancipation. So language can, as much as language can be used as a means of domination, social control, and power, it is also a means of enlightenment and emancipation. We use the same tool used by certain people to enslave others and dominate others by influencing their perception. The same language, the same tool can also be used for social change and reform, for creating awareness among people, and so emancipation and liberation. There is a book that I wrote 7 years ago. It's not an easy read, but if some of you, if what I have said in this class and the previous has stirred some interest in seeing the connection between language, ideology, and power, if I have provoked enough interest, then you may want to take a look at that book. It's available, should be available on the internet. If you write my name, you may reach this book in a way or another, or if anyone wants it, I can WhatsApp it to the whole group. Not an easy read, but it's worth reading it. Especially if you, as I said, if you see a value in what I'm saying. Language, and I'm taking language out of the ordinary context where we use language as a means of communication, to language as a means of power, to language as a means of domination and social control, to language as a means of, programming the masses, and also language as a means of enlightenment, emancipation, and liberation. As I said, if anyone would like a copy, please mention that in the chat column, and then I'll send you a copy. Critical reading is the process of reading that goes beyond just understanding or accepting a text to carefully consider and evaluate the reading, identify the reading's strengths and implications, identify the reading's weaknesses, any flaws, any problems. Let's watch this video about critical reading and critical thinking.
As you probably already know, effective readers read critically. As a critical thinker, you evaluate the information or evidence the writer presents. What does that all mean? Don't you just have to understand what you read? What do you have to do to read critically? Have I been reading critically? Stick around and let's talk about thinking, writing, and reading critically. Hi, welcome to Snap Language. I'm R. Franco. I can imagine a caveman thousands and thousands of years ago admiring a cave painting. Pretty. And another caveman saying, oh, it's so derivative. At that moment, critical thinking was born, and humanity has never been the same. So what is critical thinking? Dictionary.com defines it as disciplined thinking that is clear, rational, open-minded, and informed by evidence. What? Daniel Willingham states that critical thinking involves three types of thinking: reasoning, making judgments, and problem solving. Richard Paul and Linda Elder define critical thinking as the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view of improving it. Critical thinkers raise questions and problems, gather and assess relevant information, come up with well-reasoned conclusions and solutions, keep an open mind and challenge preconceived ideas, and are self-directed, self-disciplined, self-monitored, and self-corrective. Okay, all that sounds good. So critical thinking has to do with rational thinking, evaluating information. For me, critical thinking has to do with not simply accepting someone else's ideas, not even your own. First, you evaluate them. You ask questions. If an idea makes sense, great. Otherwise, you reject it. And you can even explain why you rejected it. Then you replace that idea with even better ideas. When you write, for example, you want to have a good understanding of the topic you're writing about. Depending on the purpose of your writing, you make sure you have accurate, relevant information, and you present it in a way that makes sense to the reader. And how does that apply to reading? Well, when we read, we almost intuitively know when something does or does not hold water. We say, "This is a good article," or, "I don't buy it." But intuition can only take you so far. We need to follow certain steps to evaluate the information systematically. As you evaluate someone else's thinking, even your own thinking, you want to examine the information carefully and ask questions. What evidence do they use to support their ideas? What information do they perhaps leave out so they wouldn't contradict their own position? Are the conclusions based on facts or opinions? Are the facts relevant and accurate? Are the opinions justifiable? Are there logical flaws or fallacies? That's a lot of complex thinking. You can think of it as critical thinking is hard, or you can think of it as, wow, isn't it amazing how human beings are capable of such complex thoughts? It takes practice, so if it seems daunting, do not freak out. The more you apply these aspects of critical thinking while you think, read, and write, the easier it gets until it becomes second nature to you. In the next few videos, we'll be talking about reading skills. Well, more like thinking skills that you can apply to reading so you can read more deeply. We'll look at things like distinguishing fact and opinion, analyzing the argument, detecting the author's biases, detecting logical fallacies, and so forth. So stay tuned for more and subscribe to Snap Language so you don't miss any new videos. And until the next time, thanks for stopping by and watching this video.
So critical reading is a big part of understanding arguments. Critical reading, the third level of thinking about a text. Although some of the material you read will be very persuasive, as we stated, do not fall under the spell of the printed words as authority. Very few of your instructors, very few of us think of the texts we assign you as the last word on the subject. Remember that the author of every text has an agenda. Language is rarely used in everyday life as a pure instrument of communication. Remember that the author of every text has an agenda, something that he or she wants you to believe. It is okay, everything is written from someone's perspective, but it's a good thing to be aware of. It's a good thing to be aware of. What's the agenda of this person? Why is he writing? Dig deeper. Take notes either in the margins of your source, if you are using a photocopy or your own book, or on a separate sheet as you read. Put away that highlighter. The highlighter is useful when you want to memorize information, but it is not useful when you want to analyze and evaluate an argument, when you want to assess evidence. It does not encourage critical reading. Part of your goal as a critical reader should be to put the author's ideas in your own words. In your own words. Then you can stop thinking of these ideas as facts and start thinking of them as arguments. So beware of thinking of everything written as a fact. Think of what is written as an argument. An argument may contain facts, and an argument may not contain facts. This is what you want to analyze and see. But don't think of it as a fact, because the mere moment you think of something written as a fact, then you block your abilities to reason, to think, to analyze, and you will buy into whatever that is, written. But think of it as an argument that is open to discussion, that is open to agreeing or disagreeing. So think of what is written as an argument. See. When you read, ask yourself a question. So one of the best things to improve your critical thinking and critical reading, Vina, is to ask questions. Raise questions. They don't want you to ask questions. Raise questions. What is the author trying to prove? What is the author assuming I will agree with? Do you agree with the author? Are there problems with the premises, the reasons the author is citing to make his or her point? Does the author adequately defend their argument, his or her argument? What kind of proof does he or she use? What kind of proof? The quantity and the quality. Only one type of proof, statistics, for example, percentages, numbers, ratios, or a mixture of, types of evidence, historical data, legal documents, facts, expert testimony, expert opinion, research findings, only relying on one type of evidence or a combination, and then judge, evaluate. Certainly someone who uses only one type of evidence will not, her argument will not be as strong as someone who uses a combination, a mixture. So you evaluate. At the end, Vina, what's so funny? At the end, you need to give 5 marks. At the end, the total mark will be 25 marks. See how much can an argument get out of 25 marks. We're going to see how we are going to allocate these marks in the course of this class. Is there something he or she leaves out that you would put in? Does putting it in hurt his or her argument? These are some examples of the questions. You can ask more. As you get used to reading critically, you'll start to see the sometimes hidden agendas of other writers. And you can use this skill to improve your own ability to craft effective arguments when writing. Critical reading depends or includes the following 3 abilities: being able to separate fact from opinion, being able to detect propaganda, and being able to recognize fallacies. These errors in reasoning we're going to exemplify today. A quick video about these three things that can help you in becoming a critical reader.
Skilled readers are those who can recognize an author's point and the support for that point. Critical readers are those who can evaluate an author's support for a point and determine whether that support is solid or not. This lesson will extend your ability to read critically in 3 ways: separating fact from opinion, detecting propaganda, and recognizing errors in reasoning. First, we'll look at the difference between fact and opinion. A fact is information that can be proved true through objective evidence. Facts can be checked for accuracy and thus proved true. Here is an example of a fact. At least 4 out of 5 adults will experience lower back pain at some point in their lives. Extensive medical research confirms that this statement is true. An opinion is a belief, judgment, or conclusion that cannot be objectively proved true. Here is an example of an opinion. The best treatment for lower back pain is physical therapy. There is no consensus in the scientific community that this is true. Medication, exercise, surgery, and acupuncture are among the treatments recommended by experts. It is important to remember that much of what we read and hear is a mixture of fact and opinion. Now we'll look at a second way to extend your ability to read critically, by detecting propaganda. When advertisers, salespeople, and politicians say, "Buy our product," or "Vote for me," they often lack adequate factual support for their points. Instead, they appeal to our emotions by using propaganda techniques. Part of being a critical reader is having the ability to recognize these propaganda techniques for the emotional fluff that they are. The most common type of propaganda technique is transfer, in which products or candidates try to associate themselves with something that people admire or love. This picture is an example of transfer. Here, a political candidate wearing an American flag and saying "Vote for me" is accompanied by a beauty queen wrapped in a USA banner. The candidate is hoping that the positive feelings we have toward the sexy-looking beauty queen and the patriotism stirred in us by the American flag and the USA banner will be transferred to him and get us to vote for him. Chapter 9 in the textbook will tell you more about transfer, as well as 5 other propaganda techniques: bandwagon, testimonial, plain folks, name-calling, and glittering generalities. There are other propaganda techniques as well, but these 6 are among the most common. Now we will look at some common errors in reasoning, also known as fallacies, that take the place of the real support needed in an argument. A valid point is based on a rock-like foundation of solid support. A fallacious point is based on a house of cards that offers no real support at all. One common fallacy is called circular reasoning. In an argument using circular reasoning, the supporting reason is really the same as the conclusion. Such evidence is illogical. Here is a simple and obvious example of such reasoning. Alan Gordon is a great manager because he is so wonderful at managing. The supporting reason, "he is so wonderful at managing," is really the same as the conclusion, "Alan Gordon is a great manager." We still do not know why he is a great manager. No real reasons have been given. The statement has merely repeated itself. Circular reasoning is a fallacy that ignores the issue. Another common fallacy is called false cause. This is a fallacy that oversimplifies the issue. The fallacy known as false cause occurs when one assumes that because event B follows event A was caused by event A. Look at this example. My favorite TV show was moved to a different time slot this season. No wonder it's now getting canceled. But there could be reasons other than the move to a new time slot for the programs getting canceled. Perhaps the show has less competent writers, or perhaps a favorite actor has left the show. In any case, it's dangerous to assume that just because A came before B, A caused B. Chapter 9 in the textbook will tell you more about these two fallacies. It will also explain two more common fallacies that ignore the issue, personal attack and straw man, and two more common fallacies that oversimplify the issue, false comparison and either or. In all of these fallacies, a point is argued, but no true support is offered for that point. To summarize, in this lesson you learned that critical readers evaluate an author's support for a point and determine whether that support is solid or not. Critical reading includes the following three abilities: separating fact from opinion. A fact is information that can be proved true through objective evidence. An opinion is a belief, judgment, or conclusion that cannot be proved objectively true. Detecting propaganda. Advertisers, salespeople, and politicians often try to promote their points by appealing to our emotions rather than our powers of reason. To do so, they practice 6 common propaganda techniques: bandwagon, testimonial, transfer, plain folks, name-calling, and glittering generalities. Recognizing errors in reasoning. Politicians and others are at times guilty of errors in reasoning, fallacies, that take the place of the real support needed in an argument. Such fallacies include circular reasoning, personal attack, straw man, false cause, false comparison, and either or.
All right. This is another useful video, so let's watch it together.
Writing an argument is difficult enough, but how do you teach students how to analyze someone else's argument and determine its strengths and weaknesses? Well, first, let's acknowledge one of the hardest parts of this task for students, and that is to stay focused on the writing purpose. They are not to be including their own personal opinions on the topic or the issue, but rather they are to be evaluating someone else's. Such an analysis would typically revolve around 4 factors, and this is what writing an argument. First, they should summarize the author's reasons provided in his argument. In the standards, this is referred to as identify, explain, or trace the author's reasons. So, while simply recapping the author's reasons, determine if they're logical. Do they make sense? Second, students should assess the evidence that the author provided. This thing should be packed with proof. Look at the quantity of evidence provided. Is there a lot of data? Is there sufficient support as the standards read? Or is it a little skimpy? Besides the quantity of evidence, we also want students to look at the quality of that evidence. Is it all numbers, statistics, dates, percentages, ratios? Or are there also some expert quotes and some anecdotal evidence? You see, a stronger argument has a good mixture of different types of data. And here's one more thing when assessing the evidence. We have to look at how current is it. Is the author citing data from 50 years ago? That may not be a big deal if the piece is about something regarding World War II. But what if the topic is current trends in technology? That's going to be something to take note of. So, students should summarize the author's reasons, assess the evidence, and third, they should identify the perspectives presented. You see, persuasive writing is very lopsided. It's very one-sided. All of the sentences provided are about the one side I'm fighting for. But a strong argument is going to acknowledge the opposition. It's going to give some space, literally some sentences, to other viewpoints. So, does this piece represent multiple perspectives? And when the author is referencing other viewpoints, what's his overall tone and language? Is he fair-minded and respectful? Or is he biased, stereotypical, a little sarcastic, even derogatory? A final consideration in such an analysis argument would be to look outside the piece. Take note of any information provided about the author himself. What are his qualifications, his experiences? What's his expertise? You see, any information about the author could make an argument even more credible.
Yes. Right. Argument.
A good argument is not an emotional experience in which people allow their anger to get out of control, leaving them ready to start throwing things. Instead, it is a rational discussion in which each person advances and supports a point of view about some matter. We might argue with a friend, for example, about where to eat or what movie to see. We might argue about whether certain performers or sports stars deserve to get paid as much as they do. In an argument, the two parties each present their supporting evidence. The goal is to determine who has the more solid evidence to support his or her point of view. In this playful cartoon, the wife's supporting evidence is simply that the husband has no say about where they will go for Thanksgiving. Argumentation is an important part of much of what we read. Very often, the three most important things we must do as critical readers are recognize the point the author is making, decide if the author's support is relevant, decide if the author's support is adequate. A good argument is one in which a point is stated and then persuasively and logically supported. Here is a point. Evidence suggests that men are more romantic than women. You may well disagree with this, especially if you are a woman. Why do you say that? You might legitimately ask. Give your reasons. Support is needed so you can decide for yourself whether a valid argument has been made. Suppose the point is followed by these three reasons. Studies indicate that men fall in love more easily than women, whereas women fall out of love more easily than men. In interviews, women are more likely than men to say they would marry someone they didn't love. Research shows that men hold more romantic beliefs, such as love lasts forever, than women do. Clearly, the details provide solid support for the point. Of course, you still might question the point and provide evidence of your own that supports your point of view. Given the complexity of important issues, we must try our best to think as clearly as we can about them. We must decide what we individually think after close consideration of all the evidence available. Once you identify the point and support of an argument, you need to decide if each piece of evidence is relevant. In other words, if it really applies to the point. Here is a point and two pieces of evidence. Which of the two statements is relevant support for the point?
Despite their fearsome image, sharks have more to fear from humans than humans do from sharks. So sharks fear us more than we fear them. Which one of these two supporting points is relevant to the point, the argument? Some species of sharks are able to detect as little as 1 part per million of the blood in seawater. Some species of sharks are able to detect as little as, well, this doesn't seem to be. The point here is that sharks fear or have reasons to fear humans more than humans have to fear sharks. Let's look at B. Shark fin soup soup made of shark fin is considered a great delicacy in the Far East, and hundreds of thousands of sharks have been slaughtered. So B is relevant to A. So B is relevant since it has to do with, sharks being afraid of humans, but not A. Let's
Statement B is relevant. The fact that hundreds of thousands of sharks have been slaughtered for their fins is relevant support for the idea that sharks should fear humans. Statement A is an interesting fact about sharks, but it does not support that idea that humans are a threat to them. It is not relevant to the point.
though it has to do with
A
shark,
valid argument must include not only relevant support,
but also adequate.
adequate support.
Wanted
Support
inequality.
substantial enough to prove the point. For example, it would not be valid to argue abortion is wrong if one's only support was, my sister had an abortion and has regretted it ever since. Such an
Listen.
important issue would require more support than the attitude and experience of a single relative. Textbook arguments generally have solid support, but recognizing the author's point and watching for relevant and adequate support will help you become a more involved and critical reader. To summarize, in this lesson you learned that a good argument is made up of a point or a conclusion and logical evidence to back it up. To critically read an argument, you must recognize the point the author is making. To think through an argument, you need to decide if each piece of evidence is relevant. To think through an argument, you also need to decide if the author's support is adequate.
All right. What to look for when analyzing and evaluating an argument? These are the things to look for when you want to understand and analyze an argument very quickly. Issue, and that's the topic basically the put forward by the author. The issue. Obviously, first of all, you need to identify the topic. What is the issue here? What's the topic? The general subject. Author's argument. That's the set of ideas that support a point. The argument is the point made by the author, which usually comes in the form of statements, premises, and a conclusion. Reasons and a conclusion. Two types of statements make up an argument: the premises or the reasons, and the conclusion. The point supported by the premises. And so the argument is a set of ideas that support a conclusion. Argument is not bickering or fighting or brawling, it's a rational discussion. Argument in academic writing and critical thinking is the author's point. That's the main idea, that's a claim, that's a thesis. It's the author's attempt to support a conclusion. The author's beliefs or views on an issue. It is a set of ideas that support a point. It is the conclusion in a word. The ultimate purpose, the message. So you need first to identify the issue, identify the author's argument, that is the point he or she is making, and then summarize or recap or trace the reasons, the premises the author is citing or developing to support. These should be clearly found in the piece. You can highlight them, you can pick them out Usually the topic sentences of each paragraph, of each subsequent paragraph. So as you skim a reading, you'll be able to figure out these reasons or premises, usually, as I said, written in the topic sentence of each paragraph. So this will be understanding the argument, deciding what the issue is, identifying the point he's making, and recapping the reasons. Once you do this, you're ready now for analysis, for assessment. When you assess the evidence, you look at 5 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so 5 here, 3 here. Then there are 8 things to look for when understanding and analyzing, evaluating an argument. First, you need to figure out the issue. Shouldn't be difficult. What's the topic? Abortion, OPSI, smoking, whether abortion should be legalized or criminalized, whether smoking should be allowed, on the premises of OPSI or not, whether exams should be made online or at home. Remember the word whether in introducing the issue. So identify the issue. Then the point the author is making, the position of the author, the stance. What's the position of the author about this issue? Does he advocate this or that? By the way, the word advocate, when used as a verb, advocate, Al Zachary, and I'm addressing everyone, when used as a noun, it is advocate. Because in your presentation, it was used as a noun, but you pronounced it as advocate. As a noun, advocate. So, pronunciation. There are many, this is a pattern actually in English, a pattern. Many words that end with "ate" are pronounced as "ate" when used as a verb, but "at" ashwa when used as a noun. Let me see if I can just recall one more example. A word that can be used as a noun and as a verb, ending in ate. I cannot recall an example because this wasn't, in my mind, but I have drawn your attention to a pattern in English. Not all words, but many of those ending with the suffix ate and can be used as a noun and a verb, you will see this change in the pronunciation, so be aware of this. Where are we? So, relevance and adequacy of the support. You need to assess these 5 things to decide the value of the argument. And so, this last slide summarizes what we have been saying so far. Argumentation is an important part of much of what we read because writers argue a point. And so argumentation is then an important part of much of what we read. And the critical reading is a big part of understanding and assessing this argument. And so when analyzing an author's argument, a critical reader, a critical thinker needs to, these are the 8 things put neatly to you. First, you need to, in your attempt to understand the argument, identify the issue, and part of your identification of the issue is also to decide whether it is descriptive or prescriptive. Is it an issue about, is it a prescriptive issue where you find people who can agree or disagree with the issue, whether it's right or wrong from the perspective of different people, whether this should be allowed or not allowed. So prescriptive issue, as I said, abortion should be made legal or illegal. This is definitely an issue, a prescriptive issue, where the author or the writer is trying to prescribe rules of correctness. What should be done in this case, whether it should be made legal or illegal. Or a descriptive issue where the author is trying to describe something, and your job as a reader, critical reader, is to evaluate this description, see if it is accurate or inaccurate. Accurate, fine. Inaccurate, then there is a hidden agenda to deceive, and you need to figure it out. Recognize the point the author is making. That is the author's position. That is the author's position. And then you need to recap the premises. These are the reasons the author is providing to support his position. Having done that, you move to the evaluation or assessment stage. And here you basically consider 5 things. As you assess the evidence the author is providing, excuse me, you decide if the author's support is relevant and adequate. 2 things. Decide if the author's support is objective. Decide if the author's support is valid. Decide if the author's support is credible. Decide if the author's support is complete. Your ultimate goal is to decide if the conclusion is logical, accurate, and has sufficient support. That's your ultimate goal. The conclusion, the message, is it logical? Is it accurate? Is there sufficient support? How to do that? Now we're going to revisit these 5 things that you need as a critical reader to evaluate. These 5 things: the relevance and adequacy of the support, objectivity, validity, credibility, and completeness. So we're going to take a 5-minute break now, and then get back and go through these 5 things that you need to take into consideration when evaluating an argument, and go through them in the remaining of the class one by one. Relevance and adequacy, objectivity, validity, credibility, completeness. 5 things this is the framework for analysis. Before that, the 3 things: identifying the issue, recognizing the point, and recapping the reasons. Having done that, you move into the analysis stage. So a 5-minute break, and then we shall look at these 5. So please open your book, by the way, on page 160, 161, because we're going to look at these in the textbook. So we shall be back in 5 minutes. All right?
I spent 1,000 sleepless nights in wait of dreams I could not find. I walked 1,000 empty roads in search of signs to bring me home. With every breath I spoke your name. With every breath I spoke your name. And heard it rolling in the wave. And heard it rolling in the wave. Beneath a veil of ocean blue. Beneath a veil of ocean blue. I broke illusion from the truth. I broke illusion. You said, walk to me and I'll find you. Call me and I'll show you. Hiding like a pearl for you. To me and guide you from deep inside you. Hiding like a pearl for you. And from the pulse beneath my skin, you called me to a source within, where every layer revealed one more, a secret brighter than before. And at the heart there lay just one. And at the heart there lay just one. The root of all that I'd become. The root of all that I'd become. I watched the surface start to break. I watched the surface start to break. Free of form, free of shame. Free of form. You said, walk to me and I'll run to you. Call me and I'll show you. Hiding like a pearl for you. To heal and guide you from deep inside you. Hiding like a pearl for you. For you.
All right. Hi guys.
Hi, Doctor.
I hope you've enjoyed the song during the break. Have you, Kong?
Yes.
Great. All right, where are we? So the first of these, the first of the 5 factors or indicators or criteria to evaluate or assess is, come on, relevance and adequacy. You want to see if the reasons you have recapped or summarized are one by one relevant. Remember the shark example? We've seen one that is relevant, one that is not relevant. And also the adequacy, if they are sufficient or not. So I'll keep this slide, the last slide, so that you can Decide if the author's support is relevant and adequate. Here I would like you to start by looking at this interesting video by
Hi there. When we talk,
Dr. Mark Franco.
write, or tell a story, we want to communicate something. Sometimes the information is pretty straightforward, as in 1 + 1 = 2, but a lot of times what we share is not so straightforward, so we may need to argue the point. But when someone presents an argument, you don't simply accept it. Or do you? Shouldn't you analyze it to see if it's a sound argument? Stick around and let's talk about analyzing the argument. Hi, welcome to Snap Language. I'm Mark Franco. An argument, or a logical argument, is a set of ideas put together to support a point. For example, this is a very simple argument. You like Japanese food, so you'll love the sushi restaurant. The claim is that because you like this, you'll also like that. But is it a good argument? If you understand really well what an argument is, you can then build strong arguments that support your ideas when you speak or write. And of course, when you listen to or read someone's arguments, you can also make sure that the arguments are well built or convincing. To build an argument, you need statements or claims. One of these claims is a conclusion. The other claims are premises. They provide evidence to support your conclusion. Let's look at a very simple example. Hawaii has hot weather year-round and beautiful beaches, so it is the best place for a vacation. There are 3 claims in this argument. The main point, or the conclusion, is that Hawaii is the best place for a vacation. 2 premises support this claim. 1, Hawaii has hot weather year-round, and 2, Hawaii has beautiful beaches. Let's see how well this argument works. What supports the point that Hawaii is the best place for a vacation? One of the premises used as evidence is that it's hot there year-round. Well, if you like hot weather, yes, but what if you don't? And what if you'd rather go skiing? The other premise is that Hawaii has beautiful beaches. How do you define beautiful? Why beaches in Hawaii? Aren't there other places in the world with beautiful beaches? What if you prefer the mountains or the city? We're not trying to prove or disprove that Hawaii is a great place for a vacation. We're simply analyzing the argument in this example. Even if you agree that Hawaii is a great vacation spot, you may decide that this argument doesn't make a good case for Hawaii. Let's look at another example. See if you can identify the claims and which is presented as the conclusion and which are the premises that support that conclusion. Cell phones pose serious risks to their users. Several studies have shown a correlation between cell phone use and the development of brain tumors, Hardell. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, classifies cell phones as a possible cause of cancer. Pause the video now if you need time to identify the claims.
So the first step is to, the 3 things to look for is the issue, the point, that is the conclusion, and then the claims or the premises. So, Al-Zakri, what's the issue here? The issue is
Cell phones pose serious risks to their users.
Not exactly. I would say that the topic here is cell phones. The issue is about cell phones. The point the author is making is that cell phones pose serious risks to their users. So this is a position now taken by the author, and the author is going to argue for his position that cell phones pose serious threats or risks to their users. So you've got to be careful. You may want to throw your mobile phone and never use it again. So let's see, what are the premises the author, how many premises, what are they that the author is developing to support his position. Al Zakri? Number one.
Several studies.
This is premise number one, okay?
Several studies have shown the correlation between cell phone use and development of brain tumors.
So this is premise number one. City, next. Premise number two.
The internet. Good, me, continue. Okay.
I've asked City, unless she is asleep, then yes.
Did you mention my name, Doctor?
Yes, City, read the second premise.
Oh, all right. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classified cell phones as possible cause of cancer. That is premise number two.
So there are two premises. Now this is the initial stage. The next stage is to assess the evidence in light of the 5 parameters or factors we have mentioned: relevance and adequacy, objectivity, decide. Now we are in the context of discussing the first of these parameters, and that is the relevance and adequacy, sufficiency of the premises.
Premise 1 is here. Premise 2 is here.
So let's hear from Dr. Franco. Let's see his analysis or evaluation of the argument.
The main point, or the conclusion, is here. But wait, before you swear never to use a cell phone again, let's analyze the argument. Look at the premises again and ask questions. Are there problems with these premises? Is there sufficient evidence to support the conclusion? Researchers have found a correlation between cell phone use and the development of brain tumors. How good were these studies? A correlation does not mean that cell phones were the cause. Are there studies maybe that found no correlation? The second premise is that they classified cell phones as a possible cause of cancer. A possible cause of cancer means the evidence is not definitive. Did they make that classification based on the same studies mentioned in premise 1? If so, this premise is a bit redundant. Again, right or wrong, we're just analyzing the argument. As a critical thinker, you must challenge your assumptions and other people's assumptions. Just because something is in writing doesn't mean it's a fact or the truth. Even if the conclusion...
Even it's a good idea sometimes, if not always, to challenge even your own beliefs, not just assumptions. Beliefs, what you have grown up believing in. Subject even those beliefs that you have inherited from your parents and grandparents and ancestors, subject them to scrutiny, to examination. I have a number of times highlighted, or not highlighted, hinted at this. Some of you might take these hints and work on them. I'm not telling you to go and fight. No, subject them to scrutiny. Read, be informed. Do not just accept things just because Dr. Aladdin told you to do that, or your father told believes in that. You are now maybe in a better position to subjugate these ideas into scrutiny, as I said. Maybe your parents don't have a chance to take a course where they can that can help them think about their... So do not just even challenge your assumptions, even your beliefs, traditions. If they are right, stick to them. Otherwise, make it changes. Even if this would entail changing your belief system, as long as it will be, the right thing to do.
Is based on facts it doesn't mean it's a good conclusion. You may want to take another look at our video about distinguishing fact from opinion for more information on this. Snap Language has videos about reading, writing, and other topics. Knowing how to use language well helps you think critically. Therefore, you should subscribe to this channel so you can get smarter through language. Well, this argument is totally true. Totally. Well, I'll see you in part 2. For now, thanks for stopping by and watching this video. I'm serious though, Snap Language rocks.
You are. You are. He has just made an argument. Spoken argument. Language helps you think critically, and to think critically, then you need to look at to subscribe to these videos produced by Dr. Mark Franco, to look at them to help you think critically. So this is an argument. It's totally true, totally. Again, it's an argument. But it is true. I can vouch for that. I have been using Dr. Franco's videos in my classes as educational aids. He's still a linguist. He's been a linguist and an instructor for a long time, and he has decided recently to become a YouTuber, producing videos about language and linguistics. So he's an expert in the field. Let's, by the way, now watch another video by Dr. Franco about the same point.
The previous video was about understanding how an argument is built so we can read it critically and see if the argument is logical. Make sure you watch that video first. Now, one way to analyze the argument is to look closely at the evidence the writer presents and ask if it is relevant and sufficient. So stick around and let's talk about evaluating the evidence. Hi, welcome to Snap Language. Mark Franco here. So, to build an argument, we present a series of claims that lead to a conclusion. Of course, the premises in the argument must support the conclusion in a way that makes sense. Of course. You'd be surprised, though. Even an argument that appears to make sense may not be really strong. It may not even be a valid argument. Let's look at a fairly obvious example first. X-Town is a great place to live. It has many parks and recreation areas where you can relax and exercise. Its parks have vast green areas, including trees and wildflowers. The X-Town Public Library was founded in 1841, making it one of the oldest libraries in the area. In this simple paragraph, the topic is X-Town. The point the author wants to make is that X-Town is a great place to live. The author presented 3 premises to support this conclusion. Now, looking at each premise closely, the first is that X-Town has many parks and recreation areas. That's actually good evidence. Most people would agree that this makes any town a good place to live. The next premise is that the parks are green and beautiful. Well, that's more information about the parks, though. What else is there? The final premise is that X-Town has an old library. Oh, that's great, but the conclusion is that it's a great place to live. Having an old library is interesting, but it's not quite relevant to that conclusion. That's not very closely related to the claim. It doesn't provide adequate support. So pretty parks is good evidence. An old library, not so much. Is that all? Typically, when you think of a good place to live, you think of safety, good jobs and schools, shops and restaurants, good transportation, and so forth. The author here said nice things about X-Town, but one relevant piece of evidence isn't quite enough to support a conclusion. X-Town is a very safe place to live. Take a quick stroll around town and you will likely run into friendly and helpful people. A study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. No violent crimes were reported last year. What's the point or the conclusion here?
The point is that X-Town is a very safe place to live. A very safe place to live. The premises, okay, we have one here. Take a quick stroll around town and you'll likely run into friendly and helpful people. This is a premise 1, supporting or trying to support the idea that this town is a safe place, safety. Premise 2, a study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. And there is one more, a third premise, no violent crimes were reported last year. Let's subjugate these 3 premises to close scrutiny and see if they hold water.
Does the author present sufficient evidence to support that conclusion? Is the evidence relevant to the conclusion? Pause the video and see if you can answer these questions.
Okay.
Did you pause the video?
Take a minute, guys, and I would like you to think about these premises. Are they, do they provide a strong support in terms of quantity, quality? Think about it for a while. I'll give you a minute and then you can share with me your thoughts. Take a look at them, see, decide. Okay, you may not know all these now because we haven't discussed all these. See if the support is relevant and adequate. This is the most important point now. Take a minute. All right, Al-Zakri, what do you think of the premises?
They are relevant because it says here because the topic is the argument is about X-Town is a very safe place to live.
So the argument, the point the author is making is that this town is a safe place, safety. So are these premises related to safety? Do they support this notion, this claim that, okay, let me take a look.
The study, the one on the bottom, the study showed that 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years, and no violent crimes were reported last year.
Okay, what about premise number 1? Is it relevant?
No.
If no, does this mean that this is a very strong argument, or since one of the premises is not relevant? I agree with you that because you have to take, you have to consider all
The
premises, yes, and weigh up the evidence against all the premises and come up with a mark. By the way, these 5, I would like you in your life when you assess the evidence in light of these 5 factors, to give each factor 5 marks. And so the total will be 25 marks. 25 marks. So just make it a mental habit as you analyze, going through these 5 parameters, indicators, factors. Okay, relevance and adequacy. If you think that all the premises are relevant and adequate, then 5 out of 5. A problem, give a lower mark. And 5 will be given for each, if it's a full mark, so 25. And so at the end, you should be able to come up with a mark 20 out of 25, 10 out of 25, 15 out of 25, and so you see the value of the argument. Going back to this paragraph, so you've said, and you are right, that premise number 1, take a quick stroll around town and you will likely run into friendly and helpful people. I wonder if being friendly and helpful has to do with safety. I don't think that
It doesn't have anything to do with safety.
And so I don't think that this is a good, major supporting detail. It is not related to the key point here, that is safety. We do not associate being friendliness and helpfulness with safety. What about the other premises? Are they directly related, closely related, or not? And so you should discuss see how close as you evaluate directly, closely related, or what about other premises?
Directly related.
Directly, because
The other premises are directly related.
Okay.
Because it speaks about global.
A study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. I see. But Al Zachary and City and the rest of the class, if they are with us, what about other years? It says in recent years.
Recent, yes.
What about other years? Maybe this year is an exception. Maybe the robbers and the criminals have gone to another place for. So doesn't this raise questions? Okay.
I mean, if they go to another place, then X-Town is a safe place.
No, but I mean, maybe they have gone just for a vacation or to develop the mechanisms of stealing and robbing, to take a course in organized crime. And here 60% decrease. Well, 60% of what number?
Of robberies and burglaries.
Okay, but of what number? I mean, if it's of 100 cases, then a 60% decrease is a good number. But what about if the number is 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000? Then 60% will not be a good decrease, given the number. What do you think?
To me, 60% is good enough, and it's a big thing.
City, good enough. This depends on what number of the crimes. Because if the number is high, let's say 1,000 or 2,000, then this will mean that there are many crimes. The 40% is still many crimes.
But look at the other premise. It says that there are no violent crimes reported last year.
I still have a problem even with this premise. What about other types of crime? Maybe no violent crime, but it doesn't say no crimes. No violent. What about if the crime is not violent? Does this make it uncrime, not a crime? Still a criminal.
You're bringing up questions here.
The degree of violence is less, but it's still a crime. So what do you think? Is X-Town a safe place to live in? A very safe? Notice,
I think
a very safe. What do you think of the argument? I mean, has the author managed to adequately support his argument?
Yes. In my
not
opinion.
100% yes.
Not 100%.
I
but
don't
yes.
think
Yeah,
so.
not 100%.
And so I don't.
Not strongly.
But not strong enough.
Yeah, it's not strong.
And so if you are planning to move to live in X town, then based on this argument, you may want to still wait and think twice.
Mhm.
I still want to go there.
I want 100% safety, not
Okay.
60%.
Well, I don't want to live in a place whose safety is not, 100% guaranteed. So if
I mean, there's no such country that is 100% safe.
I would love to accompany you, City, but I find it difficult to go, with you in a place where safety is still questionable. So I don't know how.
But the thing is, there's no country that is 100% safe. All countries have crimes.
This is another issue.
Okay.
We are analyzing this argument. Okay, let's listen to Dr. Marco and see what he has. Maybe he thinks it's a strong argument. Let's see.
The main point here is that X-Town is a safe place to live. Starting from the bottom here, no one reported any violent crimes last year. Yes, that's relevant to being a safe place. But what about previous years? Maybe last year was different somehow? The writer also mentioned no violent crimes. How about other types of crimes? But overall, no violent crime could mean it's a safe place, so let's say it's okay evidence for now. Besides, we must consider all the evidence, so let's continue. There was a 60% reduction in crimes. That sounds good. Well, that's 60% of what number?
You've got to differentiate between if an argument sounds good or is good, seems good, or is really good. After all, when a writer writes something and he has an agenda, of course he would do his or her best to convince you. But you don't want to be convinced of something that is not based on solid, foundation, not on a house of cards.
If there were, say, 1,000 crimes before, 60% fewer than 1,000 is still a lot of crimes. A writer often includes a study and statistics or data because they provide strong support to a claim, and readers tend to believe this type of information. As critical readers, we know sometimes it only sounds good. We still need to ask questions to see if any piece of information truly supports the main point, regardless where the information comes from. Finally, you'll run into a lot of friendly, helpful people in X-Town. The point is that it's a safe place, not how nice the people are. As you can see, even when it appears there's good information to support a conclusion, you should always evaluate the evidence. Did the author present sufficient information? Is all the information good and relevant to the conclusion? In this paragraph, not so much. I'm not saying you should never believe anything you read. If we trust the source, it's very likely the writer will do their best to support their claims and provide sufficient and relevant information. But we don't want to learn something that's not very accurate, right? We don't want people to persuade us to believe something unless they give us very good reasons to do so. So we should always read critically, always make sure conclusions are logical and accurate, and supported by sufficient and relevant information. Is that all? Yes, pretty much. So next time you read something, look closely. I often put extra information in the description box below a video, so take a look. There are more things you can do to read critically, but that's all for this video. What do you do to read critically? Maybe you do something I didn't mention here, so put it in the comments. For now, click that like button and subscribe to Snap Language on YouTube. And read critically. Use those critical eyes. Yeah. Bye.
So the premises might be relevant but, and might be irrelevant. You are on your way to become a critical thinker and a critical reader, still nascent, like a budding bird, not yet fully fledged, but you are on your right path. Okay, moving on, let's look at the other factor, and that is objectivity. Having decided the relevance and adequacy, the quantity and the quality of the evidence, move on to see if the support is objective. Objectivity. The hallmarks, the characteristics of hallmarks. The two characteristics of objectivity is or are facts and evidence. Logos, appealing to people's reason, the power of reason. So the use of logos, the use of reason, the use of facts, evidence to persuade people. So see if the argument has facts, supporting details in the form of any of the evidence types: research findings, studies, historical data, legal documents. You can find some of which on page 161. The whole list is found in chapter 4. So see if the author has, factual support. See if it's factual support or personal support, merely opinions, assumptions, personal experiences, personal observations. So personal observations and assumptions do not make, or opinions do not make an argument objective. So objectivity depends on the presentation of facts and any form of, factual evidence, such as I said, research findings, statistics, expert testimony, factual data, legal documents, etc., etc. So this is how you evaluate objectivity. Look at the examples on page 161. Yon, can you please read example 1, argument 1?
Example 1. Topic: Psychology of Happiness. Argument 1. Expert testimony. Dr. Glenn Williams, a psychologist from Nottingham, Trent University School of Social Science, states that a positive relationship is the key to happiness.
Glenn Williams states that a positive relationship is the key to happiness. The key to happiness is not a safe place, not a bar of chocolate, not. The key to happiness is a positive relationship. Who says that? Who is Glenn Williams? Whose testimony is this? My grandfather or the nasi lemak maker in our neighborhood? Who is
an expert?
Who is Glenn Williams?
A psychologist
A psychologist from Nottingham, Trent University.
What are the qualifications? The ethos. Who is this guy? Well, doctor, he's a PhD holder, qualifications, a psychologist from Nottingham Trent University School of Social Sciences. So this is a credible source, credibility, credible. How do you believe a source? If the author is credible, someone expert in the field, qualified. So we're talking about the credibility now. And so yeah, this is then a type of evidence. But if the author says, according to my our neighbor who is a good, car mechanic, a positive relationship is the key to happiness. What has been a car mechanic to? So we're evaluating the evidence. We're looking at things that can help us, assess the evidence. Move on to argument 2. Studies carried out by the University of Minnesota and have shown that gratitude is the perfect antidote to deal with any kind of stress. I perfectly agree with that, not only because this is based on research finding, studies carried out, but actually the Quran makes this clear that gratitude is the perfect source of happiness and dealing with any kind of stress. Gratitude, it's clearly mentioned in the Quran. This is not the time to pinpoint these, but I believe this, as I said, I have a stronger reason to believe it because, as I said, it is said by the creator of this universe. Gratitude. And of course, how can you be grateful if you are ungrateful to God, to your creator, to your sustainer, to the one who brings you everything? So the first gratitude should be actually paid to him, because if you worship other, associate other beings with him, then you are being ungrateful, worshiping someone who is. So gratitude. Okay, argument 3, statistics. I am 4, personal opinion. I am a living example of happiness. Nothing brings me down. Good for you. Good for you. And for those who live around you. So this is a personal opinion. It cannot be a good objective evidence. This is subjective. This is subjective. Okay, let's move on to validity. Decide if the author's argument, the author's premises are valid. Now, as in objectivity, there are also 2 characteristics of a valid argument. These are well-reasoning and logic. There is a lot to say when it comes to validity, but looking at the clock, I see I have to be fast. The crucial thing here is to look for fallacies. An argument may seem valid, but it is not valid. May sound valid, just like the relevancy we have just talked about, the factor about relevance. Premises may seem relevant, but may, upon investigation, seem irrelevant, or relevant but not strong, but since they allow for a room for questioning. Many writers, many speakers, especially when they don't have strong support, resort to the use of fallacies in place of real strong reasons, support. What is a fallacy? A fallacy is simply a false way of thinking about something. Again, a fallacy is a false way of thinking about something. And so it's an error in reasoning. I'll give you an example. There are, of course, many types of fallacies. This goes beyond actually the discussion of this course or this class, even the textbook. You can look for them on the internet. Types of fallacies. You can, as I said, broaden your knowledge by looking this topic up later. What's a fallacy? Types of fallacies. Fallacies such as appeal to authority, appeal to ignorance, appeal to ancient wisdom, appeal to people, straw man, the ad hoc, ad hominem. There are, as I said, types of fallacies. You can look for them on your own. Just one example, appeal to people. The fallacy known as appealing to people. This boy comes to his dad. Dad, a bit, hesitant. I would like you, Dad, to buy me an iPhone. Excuse me? But I already bought you a mobile phone just a month ago. Yes, Daddy, I know. You bought me an iPhone, a mobile phone, but that was a Galaxy, a Samsung, and I want an iPhone. And why would you want specifically an iPhone? Now, this is the argument. Now, listen to the argument. Exactly, Dr. Aladdin. The head is saying. Okay. Let's listen to the boy's argument. How he is going to convince or persuade his dad to buy him an iPhone from Apple. Three cameras. Okay. Well, Dad, because, what's important is after because. The reason, the premise, or premises. Because all my classmates, trust me, have an iPhone. I am the only one in the class who does not have an iPhone. Well, this is an opportunity for me to keep displaying my iPhone. Because your all classmates have an iPhone. Now, on the surface of it, it looks like a good reason. All my classmates have an iPhone. It sounds like a good reason. But is this really a reason in the first place, let alone a good reason? What has the fact that all your classmates, I don't know how many, there might be 2 or 3 anyhow, but regardless of the number, this is another issue. We can investigate it later on. The fact that all your classmates have an iPhone is not a reason why I should buy you an iPhone. I don't see the connection here. It looks like a reason, but it is not a valid reason. This is a false way of thinking about it. Imagine if the boy, for example, said, if he came up with a stronger argument where the premises are valid and said, for example, so why would you want an iPhone? Instead of appealing to people, a fallacy, appealing to people, all people, because the majority of people do that, so this is a good reason why I should do it. No, it is not a good reason. Maybe all these are fools. In many cases, the majority simply means or might mean that all the fools are on one side. Imagine if, for example, Trump emerges victorious in this US 2020 election. What this would mean? That all the fools are on one side. After we have seen how disastrous, how racist, how inept this political clown is. Anyhow, where are we? Imagine if the boy said, okay, all the reason why I want an iPhone is, actually there are 2 reasons, premises, arguing. The first reason why I want an iPhone is the operating system. I have read about many studies that have clearly stated that the operating system of this device is extremely fantastic. What this means that you don't need to buy another phone in a 6-month time or a year time. Meaning, because of the operating system, the phone can stay with you maybe 5 years, 6 years, or more than that. This is unlike the Samsung. Hey guys, I am not, I don't work for Apple. I am not promoting. This is too much. You may get the wrong. I'm not making an argument for Apple. This is what the boy is saying. All right. Imagine him saying that. I don't work for Apple. I don't get money from any company. And another reason is that studies also have shown that in terms of security, iPhone is numero uno, number one. I mean, imagine if the argument valid, not seems valid, imagine. So this is about validity. There's a lot to say about validity, but this should be sufficient. Also today is Jumu'at, prayer. Where are we? There are some other examples in the book, you can look at them. And you can, as I said, expand your knowledge about, fallacies, being able to detect errors in reasoning by knowing about these fallacies. Anyhow, this class will not make you, as I said, a critical thinker and reader overnight. I stated clearly at the beginning, this will just make you aware, and so it will put you on the first, step towards this world. Moving on to credibility. So the fourth parameter or factor to evaluate in light of which the value of an argument is credibility. Credibility can add a notch, can help you also evaluate. What is credibility? There are, just again, like objectivity, there are two things: facts and evidence, and validity, logic, and well reasoning. Also in credibility, we have two things to look for. First of all, investigate the author. Who is the author? By the way, credibility means believability. If an argument is credible, means it is believable, it is convincing, you believe in it. But based on what do you believe in it? Who is the author? So investigate the author. Go to Google, read about the author. If the author is someone, an expert in the field, then this will lend credibility to the argument. But if the author talking about abortion is my mother-in-law, who is a good, housewife, my respect to all housewives, my wife is a housewife, but the thing is that she's not an authority. What are the qualifications? What are the academic qualifications of the writer or the speaker? So check, investigate the author. Go beyond the text. The critical level of reading goes beyond the text. And so this will help you. I once said, if Dr. Mahathir is talking about the economy of Malaysia, then this is a credible source. But if Dr. Aladdin is talking about the economy of Malaysia, this might not be a credible source. Unless I talk about linguistics and language, then I am a trustworthy source, reliable. The other bit to look for when deciding on the credibility of a source, a reading or an argument, is the references used. What are the references? Are they strong or weak? And are they sufficient or insufficient? References. Does the author say, according to my grandmother, according to my ex-girlfriend, according to my classmate, according to doctor or professor or a study or the minister of education, or the references, the quality and the quantity of the references. So an author who uses good references to support his study, well, credible. An author that does not use references or credible references, not enough, not sufficient, or relies only on one reference all the time, one reference, one book, one study. What about other studies? So credibility can help you then decide on the strength of an argument. The last factor to look for is completeness. The author's perspective, the author's point of view. Completeness means, by the way, we have come in this course across many terms. One of the questions in the exam, test 2 tomorrow, will be about terms. I've never done this, but so try to take a look at the terms that we have come across from the beginning of the textbook. Skimming, previewing, inference, assumption, completeness, reasoning, inductive reasoning, main idea. We've come across many terms. So you still have the rest of the day and, well, the rest of the day to go through a textbook to have an understanding of these terms, so that you will be given a choice, thank God, a number of terms, and you will be asked to define only a few. So it is not difficult. Completeness. The hallmarks of completeness are substantiation, enough support, and addressing the opponent or the opposing view. An argument that is complete is an argument that also mentions the counter argument. So for every argument, there is a counter argument. If your argument is to legalize abortion, the counter argument is to criminalize abortion, make it a crime. And so if you're holding one of these positions, then there are people who hold the other position, other view. And so a complete argument is one that leaves some space to the other or opposing point of view. We're not talking here about arguing for the other point of view. You have your own point of view, perspective that you are trying to support. But a strong, complete argument is one that, as I said, makes a mention, a sentence, a few sentences. This will make the reader think that, this author is then aware of an opposing view. He knows that there is an alternative to his view, but despite that, he's still advocating another view, which means that he did not or does not, believe in the soundness, value of the other view. It's not that he is ignorant, no, he's aware. He has mentioned it. But he has a better view. Here is the rebuttal, and he is refuting the refutation, the other view. So when you mention the other view as a writer and as a reader, when evaluating the strength of an argument, see if the author did acknowledge the opposing view. This, as I said, will add power to your argument. So an author who does not, or who ignores completely the other view, maybe out of ignorance or deliberate attempt not to, this weakens the argument. So these are the 5 things to investigate or assess after you identify the issue, the point the author is making, and the premises or supporting points details he develops to make his point or her point. I think I have explained this class, maybe as usual, thank God, brilliantly. If you have an opposing view, you can make your argument, and I am willing to read it and make amendments. Please at home look at the selfie check on page 165. Look at sample 1 on page 166, and it's important to work on the exercise on page 171, test 1, self-test. This will be the first test for you to begin reading critically. So please don't skip it. Don't skip it. That's all from me. If you have any questions, I'll be delighted to answer you. Otherwise, I wish you all the best tomorrow for test 2. Any questions? Any comments? Okay, who will be the first one to express his?
No, sure. This is just only a simple question. Is fallacy good or otherwise? Fallacy, I mean, sorry.
I beg your pardon? Come again?
Is fallacy, like what you said earlier, good or not? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Fallacy?
Yeah.
It's a bad thing. The fallacy, a writer who does not have real support will resort to fallacies. A politician who does not have real support will resort to fallacies. To try to persuade you, he doesn't have real reasons, so he will resort to a fallacy. Will try to persuade you by wrong reasoning, by wrong logic. So it's a bad thing if you want to be genuine. So when evaluating an argument, you should be watchful, you should beware, you should look for fallacies, because these weaken the argument. Actually, as I said, when an author does not have strong support, he will or she might resort to the use of fallacies. Well, because everyone watches this channel, then it's a good idea to watch it. Well, this is a fallacy. The fact that everyone watches it is not a reason why I should watch it. Maybe if you tell me because of the accuracy of the news aired or broadcast on this channel, you should watch it. This sounds like a good reason. So that's why, by the way, fallacies can be very difficult to detect and can be persuasive. But the fallacy is a fallacy. And so you've got to be really critical, and fallacies weaken arguments, but they can be persuasive and sometimes hard to evaluate for a casual reader. So you may want to read more about fallacies to be, more informed about fallacies and how to detect them. Another question? Okay, all the best. John Balagi. See you.
Thank you. Love you, sir.
Same here.
Thank you, Doctor. See you tomorrow.
Hopefully the test tomorrow is very challenging.
What's that is very challenging?
The test tomorrow, sir.
Well, this is personal. You will see. You will sit for it and decide if it's challenging or, a breeze, a pushover. This is subjective. Okay, all the best. See you tomorrow.